Hello everyone and welcome to the public forum for the 18th of August 2020. On behalf of Moonee Valley City Council, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which Moonee Valley is located, that of the Wurundjeri Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. We also extend this respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Although it's not possible for members of the public to join us in person tonight, it will remain open to the public via live stream on our website, and I extend a warm welcome to those who are watching. So it obviously does provide, though, an opportunity for residents with an opportunity to present to council on topics, as you can see zoomed in, of interest, and allows for further discussion which is not possible at formal council meetings. It usually allows community members to also ask questions without notice, depending on time. So tonight we have 4 presentations from members of the public, and then we'll move to questions without notice, time dependent. So firstly, I would like to invite Kathy and Noel from Farnham Street Neighbourhood Centre to provide an overview of the Centre's Refugee Youth Mentoring Program, for which they received the Community Development Award for 2020. Congratulations, looking forward to hearing about it.
Hey, hi everybody. Thanks for letting us have the chance to speak about this fantastic program. Neighbourhood Houses Victoria in 2019 introduced actually a number of different awards, but the Community Development Award was the most popular category, and a number of neighbourhood houses across the state applied. And luckily enough, Farnham Street won it for our Resilient Refugee Youth Project. Now, this is a project that's been going sort of in a number of forms since 2001. It involves getting volunteer mentors from the community and matching them with young refugees, which just makes such an enormous difference to their lives. I'm not sure if you can see the information I've sent in. Are you able to see that? I did send some information about the project, but the aim of the project is basically to improve the life of a young and newly arrived refugee, and it's basically by engaging them early in their settlement by providing a mentor who's responsive to their needs. It supports them to stay in the school system. It provides them with guidance and assistance to achieve their personal and professional goals. It helps them realise their full potential and enables them to meaningfully participate in the community. And it prevents social and economic isolation and disengagement. It's been a very successful project, and it's been based here at Farnham Street, and we've given it enormous support. I think it's an incredibly worthwhile project. My colleague Noel will speak about his involvement in the project. He's been a mentor and been very involved in the running of the project ever since. The project struggles for funding, but we've managed to keep it going now for nearly 20 years. And between 2008 and 2010, Moonee Valley Council supported it to the tune of $30,000 a year for the 3 years, which really did sort of cement the project and has really helped it sort of to grow. We do struggle for funding, but we've received a number of funding submissions have been successful over the last few years. So we really, it's a real priority for us. And as I said, the difference it makes in the lives of the young refugees is just enormous. So I may at this stage hand over to you, Noel, and if you'd like to speak about your involvement with the project. I can't see Noel. Is he here?
See, have we
Sorry guys, I'm a bit of a Zoom newbie. Sorry about that.
It's okay, we're all learning.
Okay, I'm not a newbie, I just dim. Okay. Look, yeah, I've been involved with the program since pretty well the inception in 2001 in some form or other. I chaired the committee for many years. And we've done a tremendous amount of work in all sorts of ways in basically the administration of it, in the documentation and in the governance of it. But more importantly, we've done a tremendous amount of work in in bringing the refugee community into our world and vice versa. And it's broken down a lot of barriers. I live in Flemington, and one of the, the interesting things about living in Flemington is diverse, and we've got the flats here, and we've got people from many places around the world. But there's a barrier there between us, and the mentoring program has been fantastic, I think, for our community to basically interact and break down these barriers, and don't see them as just a bunch of refugees that all look the same. And they're people with stories, and they're great stories. And in the 20 years it's almost been going now, we've probably had hundreds of pairings. So, once these pairings have been gone for a couple of years, they leave the program, and unfortunately we often lose contact. But I'm in contact with a lot of people, and they're not mentors anymore. They're just friends, and they're in part of each other's lives. And I think that's a really wonderful thing to be able to do that. So I'm very proud to have been involved in that. I mean, Kathy sort of took over a bit again about a year and a half ago. I just many years of fundraising, a little bit burnt out, but I'm keen to get back involved again with Kathy in the Funnel Street board. I'm happy to answer any questions about the program.
Great. Well, thank you very much, both Kathy and Noel, for that. That's great to get a little bit of an insight into what's going on. I can see the nods from Councillor Marshall there in the background. Was there any councillors that had any questions or statements that they wanted to say to Kathy or Noel?
I'd just like to acknowledge what Kathy and Noel have been doing for such a long time, and endorse what they've both said. I know one of the young people who was Noel's, a mentee of Noel's, and he's gone ahead and done pretty well with himself over time, which is fabulous to hear. And I think that from a council perspective, we really do need to give some added consideration to this type of project, because it does a lot for not very much, really. Mm-hmm. And we've got this whole new COVID business happening, and the unsureness that has been coming into people's lives over it. And one critical thing is that if we can keep these mentors connected with mentees, even if it's an online sort of thing, it makes a significant difference. And so again, from my perspective, and as a person who flips around in the Flemington area a fair bit, I know that it's got really good street cred. So thank you very much for what you've done.
I'd like to thank Jim actually for teaching some of our mentees on how to do lawn bowling many years ago.
Good on you.
Sure, they're much better than I am.
I am mindful of the time, but I'm happy if there are any other questions, or if people have questions that they think of. I'm sure Kathy and Noel, you're okay for them to be sent through, if that's all right with you.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I'll just reiterate what Councillor Cusack said. Thank you for presenting, and thank you for such a fabulous program. It's really exciting to think of how much, as Councillor Cusack said, not in the scheme of things, not that much money can really help the community. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Anne.
Okay.
No problems. So I'd now like to invite Nina and James to address the forum on the topic of preservation of parkland of Strathnaver Reserve. Thank you, Nina and James.
Hi everyone, Nina here. I'm just going to share my screen. Can everybody, hang on. Can everybody see that one?
It looks like it's coming. Yep, we've got it.
Okay, so, oops. No, why did I do that? No, I can't get to the, hang on. Okay, so we're actually going to read, James and I are going to take turns in reading from this presentation because I just get muddled with words. So I'm not going to make it up as I go. I'll have to read from the script. So starting with this page on the left is basically the site that is concerned, the embankment, and then at the top there's a level ground, which I'll show you photos of later. that is the area we want to protect because council have it marked to build a car park on, which residents are particularly not happy about, and also us friends of the Moonee Ponds Creek and open space advocates. So yeah. So I'm a resident of Strathmore and have lived beside the Moonee Ponds Creek almost my entire life. I've been advocating for the creek proactively involved in its rehabilitation for 30 years. I'm passionate about the preservation of the natural environment.
Hi everyone, I'm James. I'm a proud First Nations man and I care deeply about and for the connections of Aboriginal heritage along the Moonee Ponds Creek. I have formal qualifications in Aboriginal cultural heritage management, and I'm pleased that the Council's reconciliation policy is committed to respect, recognise and build relationships with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and encourage others in the community to do the same. The Moonee Ponds Creek is a valued tributary of the Yarra River. Here is a guide written around 2003 by Greening Australia, raising public awareness of Strathnader grasslands. This significant site in Strathmore lies within the Yarra corridor. And here are two recent photos of Strathnader grasslands that Nina and I took just the other day. This magical site provides an insight into what the vegetation of inner Melbourne would have looked like prior to European settlement. Strathnader grassland sits within Strathnader Reserve. What is special about this area is that it's one of the few sections of the creek that has retained its pre-colonisation alignment. Illustrated here is the 1945 map of the section concerned, and here is the exact same section in 2020. The creek alignment remains the same. This same photo shows the close proximity between Strathnader grasslands and the reserve site where council had proposed to build a car park. This car park is on the long-term capital works list.
All right, so I'll take over from here for a while, or for the next page. You will see it's only about, it's probably only 100, 200 metres away, and in between there's already native plantings in there. So it's very close and very, yeah. Anyway, I'll go on. So Moonee Valley City Council Reserve Master Plan clearly shows the reserve as protected space and not a proposed car park. A car park estimated at $1 million cannot be validated on a cost-benefit basis. So if you look at the top orange square, last year the car park at Strathnader Reserve Sports Pavilion was expanded from 15 to 44 car spaces, which is more than enough to accommodate the small soccer and cricket clubs. Only one game can be played on that oval at a time, so it's not like it's a big game or large, 3 matches in one day. There are only 11 match days in the year where the proposed car park may be utilised, an expensive project for such little use. So we're deeply concerned that that space where all these arrows at the bottom are pointing to is green space in the master plan. That's what we reserved, and it needs to stay as green space. I'll hand you over to James.
Next slide is respect. Moonee Valley City Council's reconciliation policy, endorsed on the 24th of November 2015, states that council respects the special and distinctive spiritual and material relationship that Aboriginal people have with the land, water, trees, rocks, hills and valley creeks, rivers and floodplains of the Moonee Valley area. Chain of Ponds Action Plan commissioned by Moonee Valley City Council has powerful references to the significance of the Moonee Ponds Creek to early Indigenous cultures. The elders stated, revegetation along the lines of the vegetation along Viscoma Street near the Basalt Ford in Strathmore would be appropriate. The creek was a focus for Aboriginal people prior to European colonisation, and it would have been understood within a wider landscape containing cultural roots, songlines and landmarks. And Moonee Valley's Junior Ranger Field Guide for the Moonee Ponds Creek recognises the strong connection of Strathnader Reserve with Indigenous history. Silcrete rocks within the reserve were used for tool making, and they're still there. I know where they are.
So the most obvious way to show respect to the First Nations people is to stop the continual trashing of the proposed car park site and protect it instead. So trashing of the site has included cars parked illegally and killing of trees. The photo on the left shows eucalyptus trees removed by council in 2014. Sadly, these trees were diseased by cars compressing the soil. Dumping of concrete waste material by council contractors when they were building the lower car park. Truckloads of sand destined for the sports field and only dumped here because they can. And noxious green waste dumped by tree loppers avoiding tip fees. And rubbish from match days and events at the Strathnava Reserve Sports Pavilion. So if a site looks like a tip, it becomes a tip. The only solution to protect Strathnava Reserve is to rehabilitate this site as part of the Strathnava grasslands. Rather than a car park, the site could be planted with Indigenous trees and shrubs. This would improve the habitat for wildlife known to frequent this section of the creek. So all these photos were actually taken in this section by Anna Lanigan. They're quite amazing wildlife. So the protection of the reserve is not only essential for providing habitat for wildlife, its protection is in keeping in line with Moonee Valley's own very open space policies and strategies. The 2040 Action Plan states Council's goal is to increase tree canopy cover to 30% in order to maximise the many benefits provided by an urban forest. At the heart of Moonee Valley's and Moreland's chain of ponds, the plan is for preservation of green space along the creek. And the preservation of this reserve is in keeping with the Moonee Valley Outdoors Consultation, which clearly states we are reviewing our open space planning in order to enhance and increase open space within Moonee Valley, parks, reserves, walking paths, plaza, waterways and green boulevards. So we feel, what is the point of creating these visions for Moonee Valley if the council is not prepared to follow through on their own aspirations? So our request is, on behalf of our First Nations people, residents and ratepayers of Strathmore and Moonee Valley Creek advocates, we request that the proposed Strathnava Reserve Stage 2 car park be removed from the Moonee Valley City Council's long-term capital works. And James?
So, questions. Does council have any questions regarding the issues we have raised? It'd be most appreciated if council could carefully consider the issues that we've presented here today. And also, can we ask, what is the time frame for a decision to be made on this issue, and when is council likely to advise us of the outcome?
Thanks, James and Nina. I'll just get screen sharing to be turned off if that's okay, just so we can. I
just wanted to just mention one more thing, that we thought it was very appropriate that this song about the big yellow taxi, about we don't know what we've got till it's gone. It's just, once it's gone, it's gone. We just can't afford to lose this space.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nina.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you.
Now, I know that all councillors are very well aware of what goes on down at Strathnava. Thank you very much for your presentation. It's always, it's very detailed. I think there were two questions you had at the end, James. I just want to make sure that I answer them. What were?
Well, in particular, does council have any questions regarding the issues we have raised? Probably, I don't know whether you will have or not. I think it's fairly well known. The details have been known for years. Yeah. And I mean, and do you have any questions at all? And can we have some sort of an idea of a time frame when a decision might be made on the issue, and when council is likely to advise us of the outcome?
So in terms of a decision, so I suppose your concern is that it's in the long-term capital works plan. Is that that's what it's about? Yeah. The concerns. Yeah. So that it's not in this year's budget. I think originally it was in this year's budget, and then it wasn't, or was in last year's. I get the years a bit.
It was in last year's.
Last year,
that's right. Last year, the 1920 budget, and it was removed. Then it was in the DCP, and it was removed. And now we want to put it to bed and remove it from the long-term capital.
Permanently removed.
So I would say that next time the long-term capital works plan comes up to budget, it would potentially be.
No, we'd actually like it resolved before the election. We're feeling that it's
Nina, I am happy to put up a notice of motion in relation to this. This has been a matter now that has been going on for
many years.
Well, certainly a good 18 years. Yep, and I to be honest with you, I expected it would have been resolved. It hasn't been. I agree. Let's just put it to a vote, and just one way or the other. You know, I've got reservations on a whole range of grounds. I certainly think the anticipated cost, given the engineering involved with the embankment and the angles, will be significantly more. And I think given the significant financial pressure that council is under at the moment and will be under in the times to come, is this a good use of money? And I think the answer to that is probably no. So I'll draft that notice of motion up, and it can be for the next council meeting, which will be next week.
I'd second that, Nicole. Absolutely concur.
Thanks,
Yep.
Councillor Nation.
Absolutely concur. We need to appreciate our open space. I know we've got a time, so I'll leave it back to happy to second that.
Hopefully that answers some time frame questions for you in terms of when it will be debated in the chamber.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Noting also that there's a big car park across the creek on the other side associated with this.
I've counted them. It's nearly 200
I know our
car
council
parks.
can't run or
Okay.
do anything with that, but by the same token.
Thank you. I'm very mindful that we don't have very long to go, and I want to make sure that everyone gets their fair opportunity. So thank you very much, Nina and James. I'd now like to invite Scott, representing Ratio Consultants, to address in regards to 29 to 35 St Canard Street.
Thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to present this evening, and thank you very much for holding this public forum despite the current COVID-19 restrictions.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, but sorry, Scott, to interrupt. I've got a conflict of interest on this matter, so I'll just switch.
Yep. We'll get you back in, Councillor Lawrence, when it's time.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence, and thank you, councillors. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, Ratio Consultants represents a large group of Aberfeldy residents in objecting to the aforementioned planning application for a new childcare centre on St Canard Street. We understand that this matter is to be considered at the ordinary council meeting next Tuesday night. And we believe that this application is in direct contradiction of the Moonee Valley planning scheme. This proposal is in an inappropriate location for a childcare centre and would result in acute amenity impacts to the residents. We believe it should be refused by councillors next Tuesday night. Now, council will be asked next Tuesday to consider the application against the Moonee Valley planning scheme. And this part of St Canard Street is within the general residential zone, which includes a purpose to serve local community needs in appropriate locations. By applying council's own local policy for discretionary uses in residential zones, it is proven that this is an inappropriate location for a high-intensity childcare centre. Council's local policy for non-residential uses in residential areas at clause 1307-1L includes a location objective to locate non-residential uses where they have minimal impact on local amenity. A key strategy to achieve that objective is that non-residential uses should be located on corner sites with direct access to a main road, so to not interrupt local streets. Councillors, this site is 350 metres south of Buckley Street, which is the nearest main road. It is completely surrounded by houses, with the nearest non-residential use at least 2 streets away. Local streets will be severely interrupted during the drop-off and pick-up times. And this proposal disregards council's own local policy, which clearly outlines that this is an inappropriate location for a high-intensity childcare centre. Furthermore, the decision guidelines of the general residential zone indicate that amenity impacts from traffic and from the intensity of a non-residential use must be considered by decision makers. Now, the kinder that's on the site currently has a permitted cap of 55 children. This application proposes 118 children for a new childcare centre. This more than doubles the intensity of the existing kinder. The kinder is bearable to the surrounding residents, but mostly because it is already a part of the neighbourhood. An increase of 63 children would completely transform the amenity of this neighbourhood. There's no acoustic fencing proposed to reduce the noise to surrounding properties. The traffic, noise and other amenity impacts that will occur from this proposal are surely more appropriately located along a main road. If the councillors want further evidence that this proposal is contrary to the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme, they need look no further than the almost 60 objections submitted. These residents understand the negative impacts that an approval of a high-intensity childcare centre would have on their neighbourhood. Therefore, the residents urge you, councillors, to refuse this inappropriate application next Tuesday night so that this quiet neighbourhood can remain just that way. Thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you, Scott. Before we go to questions, I might go straight to John, as you're both speaking on the same topic, if that's okay.
Thanks, Sam. Councillors, I have 6 points I wish to make for you to take home this evening. And some of these statements I'm about to make are in response to the applicant's summary of the consultation meeting that occurred in April this year. The applicant is trivialising the number of objections, suggesting that 35 are represented by ratio planning consultants. I certainly hope, councillors, you can see through this red herring and understand that these are 35 individuals who want their voice heard in the form of planning grounds for objection rather than emotional outbursts. 2, the applicant trivialises the difference between the existing kindergarten operation times and that of the proposed childcare centre. Councillors, the facts are the not-for-profit kindergarten operates generally between 8:30 a.m. and 4 p.m, with 55 children over 2 sessions over 40 weeks of the year. The proposal is for a commercially driven operation during the hours of 6:30 a.m. to 7 o'clock p.m, allowing for staff setup and closure, for 118 children, more than double the existing, for 52 weeks of the year. No respite for the residents. 3, the applicant must be dreaming, councillors, to suggest that the new facility will not operate or not compete with the heritage significance of the church and surrounding period homes. That is, it will be replacing a single-storey historic community hall, a not-for-profit kindergarten and recreational tennis courts, with a bulky 2-storey commercial building with outlandish external colour schemes. Councillors, a stark contrast. Councillors, the applicant suggests that the proposed childcare centre will provide a valuable contribution to the street and will reduce car parking impacts. Firstly, their traffic report is flawed in that a resident reports that the person employed to undertake the survey was to take a 2-hour lunch break between 12 and 2 p.m. when the street is at its busiest. That aside, I just can't see how 472 extra traffic movements generated by the childcare centre, in addition to the 380 traffic movements generated by Casa Bambini, 200 metres down the street, can improve car parking impacts. Let's not forget the increased traffic network. Let's not forget that this immediate traffic network services Resurrection, OLN and Aberfeldy Primary Schools, Beaver Street Kindergarten, Ave Maria and Essendon Keilor Colleges, and of course, Casa Bambini Childcare Centre. This area is already saturated by traffic, drop-offs, pickups, all at similar times of the day. The application is vague on staff numbers and cannot confirm the number of car parking spaces required. Therefore, there is no conclusion on on-site or off-site car parking. Like Casa Bambini, they'll all end up parking in the street. 5, the applicant suggests that the community needs this facility, councillors. There are 12 childcare centres within 2.5 kilometres of this site, all positioned on main road thoroughfares, not plonked in the middle of a quiet residential street. All have vacancies for various levels of support. 6, the childcare centre will be lit up like a Christmas tree at night, reflecting unlighted strobes of light on residents opposite, not to mention the noisy out of business hours pickups and deliveries associated with the commercial operations. And finally, councillors, the residents of St Kenord Street are most disappointed with the behaviour of the owner of the site, the St Andrew's Church Vestry, who are supposed to be model citizens of our community, who have treated the neighbours with disdain, failing to communicate, negotiate or compromise in this matter. Councillors, any bozo could succeed in putting a childcare centre plans together to comply with planning requirements on a site like this. But that doesn't make it right. The real test is the impact on the surrounding residents' amenity, the wider community of Aberfeldy, and the immediate traffic network, not just compliance for the subject site. Councillors, the residents of this street and surrounding streets are seeking your support in refusing this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Scott and John. Now, we do also have questions with notice in regards to this application, but did councillors, before we move to that, did councillors have any questions, noting that we do have a bit of obviously information having read our briefing papers?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, what do you mean we've got questions in relation to this presentation?
Sorry, so questions, additional questions from people from the public in relation to this childcare centre.
Okay.
We'll read them out shortly.
Happy to wait to take those on notice when they come through. Thank you. And just thank you to the gentlemen for their presentations too.
Absolutely.
Thank
Any
you.
questions for Scott or John from the councillors? No. Well, thank you, Scott and John, for that. We move to these. I think you'll probably find these questions interesting as well, as they relate to St Canard Street. So we will move to questions with notice, and we've received apologies, I need to get into, there was a late question I understand that has come through, so I just need to make sure we have all of them. Apologies for this. Rightio, so we do have some questions from members of the community, and all relate to the planning application at 29 to 35 St Canard Street, Aberfeldy. So the first question is from Barbara Deary, and thank you, Barbara, for your question. So Barbara's question reads, having two childcare centres in St Canard Street within 350 metres of one another in residential zone, I consider unreasonable. The traffic and parking will increase around the proposed childcare centre. I'm confident that many of the staff will park in the street and not in the designated car parking off the street, because it will be much more convenient. This has happened at the other childcare centre in St Canard Street. How do you propose to address this potential problem? Now, I will throw this one to Petrus Barry, who is one of our senior officers. Thank you, Petrus.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the question, Barbara. In response to your question, Clause 203-1 of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme acknowledges that the demographics of the local area include families with young children, demonstrating a need for these types of uses. The development is provided with 21 car spaces, which is 4 less than the 25 required under the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme. Given the number of spaces available on site, it is expected that these car spaces are utilised by both staff and clients of the centre, rather than first relying on on-street car parking. However, in saying this, Council does not have control over individual parking habits. Whilst it is acknowledged that there may be some overflow of spaces onto the adjoining road network, given the statutory car parking rate has not been met in full, Council's Traffic and Transport Unit has deemed that this small number can be absorbed into the adjoining road network. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barry, for that response. The next question comes from Catherine Gilson-Gin. Question 1 is, this is a residential street. Has the visual impact of the design and location of commercial car parking been considered? Thank you again to Officer Petrus Barry. Petrus, sorry, your mic's on mute.
Apologies for that. The response is, thank you, Catherine, for the question. The response is that the visual impact of the car park has been considered, and the introduction of landscaped areas abutting the frontage of the site has been deemed appropriate in order to soften the hard surface aspect to the street.
Thank you, Mr. Barry. And question 2 from Catherine was, planting is unlikely to reduce the impact. Has a rear car park with access to the rear right-of-way been considered? Thank you, Mr. Barry.
Thank you, Mayor. A rear car park area was not part of the application and therefore not considered. However, considering such an option imposes differing assessment points, particularly with regards to amenity. Things that need to be considered are additional vehicle and pedestrian noise to the sensitive areas of open space of the adjoining residential properties, as well as potentially imposing more vehicles onto St. Kinnaird Street, as people are less likely to utilize the rear car parking area for convenience of pickup and drop off that a front car parking area allows, thus potentially putting more strain on the road network. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barry, and thank you, Catherine, for your questions. The next questions are from Sue Harvey, but the first one is a statement. The statement from Sue Harvey is, this is an inappropriate commercial venture in a residential street, potentially operating for 10 to 12 hours a day. The danger caused by increased car and foot traffic has not been considered. Residential parking will be reduced. Living opposite the existing kindergarten, we already have reduced vision and access to our driveway, and a development of this size will impede our safe egress when four-wheel drive vehicles against our drive block our vision. The generated traffic noise will lead to our loss of amenity. So that was Sue Harvey's statement. And then Simon Bowler has put in a question as well. And his question is, will pick up and drop off be conducted on the proposed site or on the street? And I'll pass this one to our Officer Petrus-Berry as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Just in response to that question, Simon, thank you. The proposed visitors car park and drop off is on site and will be used for the purpose, for this purpose as you've asked. Maybe just to point out, there were 4 other questions that were posed by Simon, and officers will prepare a response to those and just circulate that back to Simon as well.
Thank you. Could you please circulate the questions and responses back to councillors as well, please?
I certainly will. Certainly.
Thank you. Did any councillor have any questions in relation to the questions? No? Any final questions? Now, we probably do have about 1 or 2 minutes if there were any questions without notice, keeping in mind that they would have to be very short. Don't believe there's any hands going up. No? Beautiful. Well, in that case, I'd like to thank everyone for joining in on our first public forum Zoom meeting. It's a first for us as well, so thank you very much. It went relatively smoothly, so I do appreciate your time in logging on and joining us. If you'd like any further information or whatnot, please feel free to email either myself, councillors, or the governance team. So thank you to everyone, and yes, enjoy Moonee Valley. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.